we are not just one identity and a fixed identity. Just because we belong to a group, that doesn't mean that that fixes us all. And I think if we consider ourselves with a fluid identity, we can also be open to the more fluid identity of the others, and then have a lot more ground of getting to know each other really authentically in our uniqueness. In a sense, that's what unites us as human beings.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Create Magic at Work. I'm really excited to bring this guest to you today because we are going to deep dive into some topics that I know we all love. And I've been feeling like lately on the show, I haven't been talking about some of the things that I think I'm really passionate about and that we're all passionate about. I really want to weave the spirituality and the workplace piece into a lot of the episodes and not just have this show be the traditional leadership podcast. So I'm really excited. Dr. Judy Neal introduced me to Lenette Schuijt. That's who I have here for everyone today. She has 30 plus years of experience as a consultant, executive coach, and leadership trainer. She's written several books on leadership and is a much valued keynote speaker on topics such as transformation, self-organization, and inspiration. I also caught an article on her website about spirituality in the workplace, so that was really cool to see. She's also the first in her family to have attended university and has crossed class boundaries. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We've never talked about this on the show before, what it's like when you cross class boundaries. That's going to be an interesting conversation. As a first generation professional in the corporate world, she had to find her own voice. And I bet you there's a lot of us out there that are first generation professionals in the corporate world. Lenette, welcome to Create Magic at Work.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me on your show. It's really great to be here from France.
Yeah, thanks for coming in from France. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
So anything else you want to share about yourself?
Well, you did a pretty extensive bio, and I would just like to say I'm really happy to be on the show, and maybe the subject of today may sound a bit outside of the traditional leadership issues, but I am sure that for organizations and leaders in organizations, it's really worthwhile looking at class as a marker of diversity and of using all the talent in the organization that we have.
Yeah, we've never talked about that or looked at things from that lens on Create Magic at Work. So could you start maybe by sharing your personal journey of being a first generation professional and crossing class boundaries? What were some defining moments for you in that journey?
Yes, my father was a horticulturist. He grew tomatoes and cucumbers. And I come from a large Catholic family in an agricultural environment, not a town environment. And I was the first one in my family to not only attend university, but to really finish a diploma of high school. Even that was rare in my family. For a long time, that felt as an opportunity because my parents never had the chance to go to study, although they would have wanted it. But they had to work at the age of 13 in the company that my father used to work in. And it was lonely sometimes, but it felt also as an enrichment of my world that I could dive into books, that I started to learn about other countries, about history. And it's something that the French sociologist Bourdieu calls cultural capital. Unknowingly, growing from my environment into another circle, I acquired a lot of cultural capital that my family didn't have, which created also a gap between me and my family. And one of the defining moments was when I was at university studying social studies, and we were all talking about laborers in industry and how we could emancipate them and what we could do. And I felt like this split person, like I was the student and researcher researching a different group, and yet I was also part of that group, not necessarily labor, because my father was more agricultural, but the same level in society. And I didn't say where I was from. I felt ashamed to say where I was from. That really got me thinking about, why am I ashamed of where I come from? And how do I deal with this split in myself? And many people I have encountered, talked to, interviewed, have felt this kind of split. And the subtitle of my book that I wrote on this is Living in Two Worlds, because I think that is, for many people, the experience. They live in one world, but they also live in another world. And that's why I call them edge walkers also sometimes, because I notice in my work, I can deal with CEOs, but just as well with the cleaners and the security agents, because I feel at home at both social circles.
Yeah, you have me thinking about a lot of different ideas as you're sharing that. I'm interested in the people that you spoke with to write Living in Two Worlds that felt this way. I do see a lot of and I mean this in a positive way. I do see a lot of pride, at least in America, with individuals that may have come from possibly a different social class and worked their way up on their own. Like nothing was handed to them, like the bootstrap kind of work, and then you're the CEO all of a sudden, and so you understand kind of all the areas that different people come from, like you were talking about. So I'm curious to hear your take on that perspective, and then I'd love to hear a couple of stories or 2 about the living in 2 worlds, like, how has that impacted people that have never climbed the corporate ladder before that are there? And what does that look like in their life? What are you finding from writing the book, Living in Two Worlds? I give you, like, 2 big questions, so feel free to.
Let me start with your first question, which was, who did I speak to? Who did I interview? I basically found my persons that I have interviewed through talking about my own history, my own journey, and people said, "I relate to that." 'Cause when you go around asking people about where they're from in their class, most people don't look at their lives from that perspective. They look at their lives from, "Where are you from? California?" But from class, most people didn't identify with it. However, when we started conversations about that, there were often things they recognized. Let me talk a bit about the social climber. Like you said, people work their way up. That's the way we usually speak about social mobility or social ascension. I hate that, really, because it's a vertical term, and it suggests that upper higher is better. That's why in our language, I use the French transclass, which is similar to transgender. It's transclass. It's people who have gone through a transition from one class to another, and it could be from a upper class position for whatever reason, going down to a very modest socioeconomic situation. Could be that as well. So the focus is more on the journey horizontally than necessarily on the climb up. And the horizontal, there's a beautiful word that one American writer on this subject used. He said, it's a straddle. It's like you're with 2 feet on both sides of a gate or something, you know? It's like you straddle a horse. And it is standing with both feet in two different circles. Now, the way the statistics look at social mobility is you've gone from A to B. You started here and you're now here. And they compare that from the salary that your parents had and yours, or the educational level from your parents and yours. So it's from A to B. Whereas the experience from people that I spoke with is not necessarily we've gone from A to B. It's more like we went through a journey with many challenges, and sometimes we thought we were the only one who had those challenges. But going along, we found out we missed knowledge. At university, we had never been to another country, whereas the other students always went to ski in Switzerland or in Austria because they had a different family background. So along the way, you discover the differences. And then just all the people that I've spoken with never had the idea of, I want to reach the top or so. It was more motives like I wanted to get away from a limited circle. I wanted to learn. I wanted to grow. I wanted to discover the world. And in that, they made a social ascension, but that was never the motive to begin with. And when they end up at the top, which they often do, I notice that those who end up at the top have a much bigger understanding of the perspectives of all the people in the organization and not just an perspective of the top. And let me give you an example of one person I spoke with. Her father was a farmer, and she became a lawyer and then worked for the government for a long time. And she was asked recently to negotiate between the farmers in our country and the, well, how should I call it, the traditional oil companies that have found supplies of oil under their farmland. There are tensions in our society around that, and she speaks the language of the lawyers of the oil companies, and she speaks the language of the farmers. So she's an excellent person to negotiate and to create an understanding for both parties for one another.
You had me thinking about the horizontal instead of the vertical climb. And also, a lot of people these days I see are choosing, like, not measuring your salary for where you are with success, but measuring how satisfied you are with your life. Like, I think I saw a data point the other day that said people are even choosing a lower salary position if they get to work from home rather than, like, they're turning down a higher paid job because of that. So, I think it's really interesting to think about that some people are choosing to consciously opt out of that vertical reality, if you will. And I wanna ask you also about, so you're talking about the bridge builder and the change maker of how these edge walkers that come from maybe another world, but then step into this world, and then they can build this bridge between the 2. That's like an amazing, wise, and effective change agent because they know both of those worlds. Because you do talk about spirituality in your work, I wanna talk about that for a little bit. Where does spirituality come into play with all of this? Can you share some stories with us? Because we like to hear those on Create Magic at Work a lot, where spirituality and leadership can successfully come together in a corporate setting.
Well, I think leadership in a spiritual way means being connected, being in a real authentic connection with other people. And as long as you have and people will grow up in a privileged situation and have gone to prestigious schools and then become a boss in a major company, but have never experienced all the other levels, all the other professions, occupations in a company, it is really hard to make a real connection with the groundwork that people do as a receptionist or as a canteen worker, and to be really open to the differences where people come from. For me, that is an authentic connection between people. It's opening up yourself to the uniqueness of another person and the unique journey that a person has had in their lives. the question I ask very often, and you can answer it in many different ways, is where are you from? Where did you come from? Sometimes people say, oh, I come from the countryside. And they have a life filled with these experiences from growing up in the countryside. Other people say, oh, where I come from was books. There were books everywhere in our house. Or where I come from is very highly educated parents where I did not like to be that. I wanted to do something with my hands. So these genuine life stories, I think these are important to reach a spiritual level in our connection with each other in a company setting.
Hey everyone, Amy here. Let's talk about work realities for a second. Whether you're dealing with a tough boss, struggling with team miscommunication, feeling stuck in decision making, let's be real, work drama exists and it's exhausting. But it doesn't have to be this way. At Create Magic at Work, we help leaders like you cut through the chaos, build next level communication skills, and make better, faster decisions without the stress spiral. Whether you're leading a team or just trying to keep your sanity at work, we've got your back. We coach executives and teams like yours to develop interpersonal savvy, drive engagement, and bring your vision and purpose to life so work actually feels energizing again. Imagine that. More engagement, more productivity, less drama. Our executive coaching team has been in your shoes. We've led teams, navigated workplace challenges, and know what it takes to help you succeed and achieve your goals. Real experience, real talk, and real results. If you're thinking, yes, Amy, we need this at my work, then let's talk. Click the link in the show notes and let us help you and your teams become a high-performing, engaged, and productive force of clarity and calm. I'll see you in the Zoom room. Let's throw the stress and drama out the window. Click on the link in the show notes. If we are thinking about these concepts and how to implement some of them into our companies or in with our teams, what is a tip that you can give us to look at our team from a new lens in regards to where they came from and this social mobility idea?
Well, I think that the question, where are you from, even in a team of people working together every day, is not often asked, maybe in a team outing, but that would be very interesting to know how, not only where you come from, but how has it formed you as a person? And also, how is it affecting how you make choices in the work that you do? Because I have noticed as a consultant working in big companies, I differ from other consultants in the questions I ask when I am in my first appointments with a CEO. I ask different questions because my perspective is different. So, how does your background influence the things you give priority to, the things you decide, the things you act on or do not act on? And I find that in those conversations within the workplace, people from privileged backgrounds often do not realize that there are people who have very different life experiences. It's often like they feel it's that way for everyone. A Dutch journalist once said, if you look at a pyramid from the top it looks flat. You don't see the different layers. But if you look at the pyramid from below, you see all the different levels. And so this is a consciousness raising together of where you come from, how does it form you, not to blame, not to point fingers. It's really to understand how how each person's uniqueness contributes to the work that the team does and how you can learn from each other.
And when you speak of privilege, are you speaking of coming from a monetary or higher socioeconomic class when you're referencing that?
Well, for me, there are like 4 and even maybe 5 criteria. One is financial economic. If your parents have more money, then they can afford extra tutoring. They can get you access to prestigious schools or universities. So that's one. The second is cultural capital. If you are brought up in an environment where theater, music, books, international trips, where that's commonplace, you'll have a much richer vocabulary, much richer world from which you draw. So that's cultural capital that distinguishes us. In my home, there were no books, one encyclopedia. There was one record with Christmas songs. That was all. It's certainly not music that we played. That was not something we did. We listened to the radio, pop songs, maybe sometimes. So differences in cultural capital. And then we have social capital, and that's differences in the social network you have. My parents had a huge social network, but it was the network of people in the same situation, and we tried to help each other get along. What I see in privileged situations, a social network helps the children find an internship, get a job, get in touch with a familiar person if you want to interview them or get politically active. So the social network is also one that differentiates privileged or not privileged. And then a Dutch government research institute added another one, which maybe in a time of social media is interesting. And they say that's personal capital. And that is how you look, how you present yourself, how you can get influencers on Instagram. It is an interpersonal skill of looking nice and attractive and thereby attracting other people. And that is also something that differentiates, because I think the people with a richer vocabulary who have learned to present themselves at the dinner table in a more privileged situation often have more skills in presenting themselves attractively. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for breaking that down. I just think it's interesting to hear that, and I immediately was like, "Oh, I felt a little bit empowered, really, because I wanna improve my cultural capital." And I feel like I can grab a book and read more and play more music, and being a Capricorn, the way you described this creative listening to music and reading and all of these things as improving, or I don't know if that's the right word, but increasing my cultural capital, I was like, "Oh, I would love to do that." And when you talk about social capital, I really, really, I mean, and Lynette, you tell me if it's a different word, but I feel like I really improved my social capital in the corporate space. I was in roles, leadership roles, senior leadership roles, where I was at dinners and tables and networking events that I would have never been at before. And I really learned how to interact with others, how to speak. And when you bring up that question to ask someone on your team, where are you from? And if you do it in front of everyone in a psychologically safe way, I think that's so cool because it helps share everyone's story. It helps you see the humanity in each other. And as a team, as a former, team leader, I could listen and pinpoint this person's unique skill set, and we can all come together and do some really productive work for the greater good of the team, because now I know, oh, Lynette has this skill set or from where she's from that I didn't know. She's able to speak with farmers and with this other group of people and understand where they're both coming from. This is really cool. And you just use those unique skills in a good way for the greater good of the team. That's the way I'm seeing that. If there's one takeaway I got from our conversation is everyone can just get a tip to do a team build, or even in the beginning and just say, "Hey, we're gonna do something fun today, and we're gonna go around and you're gonna share where you're from. Where are you from?" And then everyone goes and shares that. So those are some of my thoughts on these new concepts that you're sharing with me.
Yeah. Can I add something there?
Please.
Like you say, the whole team can be empowered when you share questions like that, when you look at the specific skill sets that people have and what you can learn from one another. And it also gives you access, such a conversation or a deepening of those questions also gives you an access to subtle exclusion, because even in a very psychologically safe team, people who have come from different backgrounds may not feel always integrated in the team. Let me give you an example of someone I interviewed. She was what you call them a high potential in a corporate setting. Her parents were Turkish and she was working class. But until she went into the corporate world, like at university or at school, she never felt any exclusion because of her being a woman, being working class, or being from Turkish parents. But in the corporate world, she noticed that she was suddenly sidelined for promotions. She didn't get other opportunities, and she couldn't get a grip on what was happening there. And she realized when she started talking about it that there are subtle social cues, such as the use of words, or some expressions, or even the tone of voice when you speak in a meeting, for instance, and that had to learn those social cues, and that there was a subtle exclusion based on her sometimes speaking too loud, or sometimes using an expression that just wasn't done there. And if you can do that in an open sphere, you can all become more aware of how unknowingly we sometimes exclude people just because other people and us speak the same language. So that is something, when we want to include people, we also want to become aware of where we unconsciously exclude people also sometimes.
Yeah. If there's one thing, one message, one idea you would want everyone listening today to take away from our conversation, what would that be?
Well, maybe something that I did not say so clearly yet, but if you live in two worlds or more than two worlds, you can conclude that your identity is not a fixed thing. It's rather fluid. In one context, you can be this, and in another context, you can be something else. And for someone who has crossed class boundaries, that's very obvious. But I think it's the same for all of us. We are not just one identity and a fixed identity. Just because we belong to a group, that doesn't mean that that fixes us all. And I think if we consider ourselves with a fluid identity, we can also be open to the more fluid identity of the others, and then have a lot more ground of getting to know each other really authentically in our uniqueness. And this is a paradox also, because if you allow room for each one's uniqueness, unique path through life, in a sense, that's what unites us as human beings. So the message would be open the different worlds in yourself and talk about the different worlds that you have in yourself. And that gives room to other people to look at their selves as well, plural, and find common ground in we are not just this or that.
I think that's a great step towards your inner essence. We talk a lot on the show about who are you without your title, you know? Who are you without what job you have, or and peeling back those layers of the getting to the I am, and that's it. Just the I am. And I think that's another great way to look at it, the way you shared it. I'm going to pull a message for everyone from the universe today. This was such an interesting conversation. And thank you for bringing this perspective to create magic at work. So now I'm really curious what journal prompt card is going to come up, because I'm going to pull a card from the Create Magic at Work journal prompt card deck. So we'll see. This is a message for everyone listening. We'll get a theme and an affirmation to make your day, week better. Let's see what we get. Ugh. Okay, we got preparation, preparing. And the illustration on the card is 8 little spiders preparing their web. I don't know if you can see it there, preparation on the bottom. The affirmation is I am oh, this is cool, because this concept was new to me, like you coming on the show talking about this. So the affirmation is I am open to learning new skills in order to succeed. That's the affirmation for everyone. I am open to learning new skills in order to succeed.
Beautiful.
Okay, Lynette, give us an idea of a new skill that we might want to master this month or year, even.
A skill that can be learned from all the people who've crossed class boundaries is to overcome your self-doubt. It's this little voice that says, "Who are you to be at that table with the CEO?" Or, "Who are you to get to the top of this company?" Well, who are you not? So the skill we can learn is to trust that we are exactly where we need to be. That's where we have work to do, and that we have everything inside us that is necessary to do that work. And just trust that it is okay who we are and where we are.
Beautiful. What a great way to end this conversation. Lynette, if people want to connect with you, how can they reach out and connect with you?
Well, I am on LinkedIn, so you can add my LinkedIn profile, but I also have a website, www.linetteschuijt.nl, and I'm on the others. I'll give you the other social media accounts that I have so people can look me up there. The book will be published in English later this year. I'll give you the information on that as well.
That's a great call out for everyone listening, and that thank you for everyone that just continues to stay in the Create Magic at Work community and listen to the episodes on this journey. And don't forget, there's so many rich resources in the show notes. So don't forget to check the show notes and click on the links. We have such an amazing community at Create Magic at Work. They go back to old episodes and listen. So when your book launches, Living in Two Worlds, we'll have that link in the show notes so they can access that. And thank you so much for sending some magic to everyone today.
Thank you for having me on the show, Amy, and I wish all the best for all the people who are listening and a lot of magic in their work every day.
I want to thank each and every one of you for coming back every week to listen to a new episode of Create Magic at Work and really helping to support and advocate for healthy leaders, workplaces, and lives for all of us. If you want any information on how to connect with me, click on the link in the show notes. You'll get access to all of the social media links for Create Magic at Work. Stay following along for more amazing episodes where we help you improve productivity and profitability in the workplace and decrease stress. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.